I want you to remember that. I wanted to remind you to stay out of my way. In all the years to come, in your most private moments, I want you to remember the one man who beat you.
Okay, even I'll admit, that was a little dark. A wee bit aggressive, but fuck it. Someone's gotta do it. Someone's gotta bring the fight to the analytics department. And I don't think it's enough for players to say that analytics guys don't know what they're talking about.
You're so dumb. You are really dumb.
But I've come prepared. And if Batman and Superman can come together for a common goal, then why not the players with the analytics staff? And if you don't think so, I got one word for you.
Martha!
Let's be clear. This isn't the first time someone's doing this. I mean, Charles Barkley does it once a week for a living.
You know, listen, people think I hate analytics. And I only do it because it's true. I hate analytics.
He's one of those idiots who believe in analytics. So, first of all, I've always believed analytics was crap.
See, this thing, it's new.
New is always better.
It's different. And a battle we see constantly with former players and analytics. But before we can get to the argument, let's take a closer look at how we arrived at the three-point revolution.
How did I get here?
Did it spring out of nowhere? Or is this simply part of the constantly evolving sport of basketball? Some people want to call this the three-point shooting era, or the point guard era, or even the Steph Curry era. But one thing is for sure, we're definitely in the analytics era. The amount of stats that they've introduced to judge how well a player is doing, added to their analysis on the game and how the game should be played, have directly impacted the way teams and players now play basketball. Sorry guys, he was right when he said this.
Stop tagging me in all these horrible basketball clips of people taking bad shots, talking about I ruined the game. I did not tell y'all to shoot that shot.
Analytics, in short, is gathering data which is then plugged into a mathematical model to predict outcomes. Oh my god, math. I can hear everyone closing this tab already. Well, stats have always been a part of sports, and the number of things they keep track of has grown over the years. One of the most famous examples of analytics in sports was with the 2002 Oakland A's, a team that had success with the sixth smallest salary in all of baseball. How did they do this? Paul DePodesta, who in the movie is named Peter Brand, played by Jonah Hill, who joined the Oakland A's management because of his radical way of looking at baseball.
Why do you like him?
Because he gets on base.
Through what he called sabermetrics, the approach of looking at the game through stats purely for the purpose of getting wins. His ideology, a higher on-base percentage correlates to more runs, which directly impacts wins. He was operating completely away from traditional strategies and ideas regarding the game, which led to success for the A's and a 20-game winning streak. They became one of the best teams, but were bounced out of the first round of the playoffs. So why did the widespread use of analytics even happen if the Oakland A's ultimately didn't win a championship? Well, the short answer is, if you're able to take $39 million and get the same results as a team that spent $126 million, how happy is that guy who spent $39 million? You see, owners love basketball, but what do businessmen love? Money. That's why they have their success. So again, why has analytics gotten so big? Because if you can pay this guy or a group of guys X amount of dollars to maximize your roster to get a lot of regular season wins, that should translate to fan support and ultimately dollar signs. 20 years later, and baseball has gone from America's pastime to America's third most popular sport, behind basketball. And many think that analytics has something to do with that. So does this mean that basketball has the same fate? To do this, we gotta start in the 90s. The 90s was dominated by Michael Jordan, soaring through the sky, floating in the air on his way to 6 championships. But the reason Michael Jordan scored over 32,000 points in the NBA wasn't because of that, it was because of this. And if you watched the Bulls and their triangle offense, we saw great teamwork. A team that had well-defined roles,
stay in your lane,
paired with the best basketball player ever. But something people never mentioned was all 5 players' ability to score in the mid-range. What made the Chicago Bulls so difficult to guard as a team was the fact that all 5 players were able to step into mid-range shots with confidence. This meant that as a defense, you had to be prepared for all 5 players because they're all a threat to score. The Chicago Bulls also understood that with such a heavy emphasis on the inside and mid-range game, they needed to spread the floor to create space. Up until this point, guards didn't have success that big men have had since the 50s, so teams were still building around centers. The idea of building your team around a scoring guard was still new, and until Jordan began winning titles, the consensus was volume shooters can't lead a team to championships. What the big man and the scoring guard had in common, however, was the need for shooters. Players like Michael Cooper, who played for the Lakers in the 80s, did a great job of spreading the floor. This was because of the introduction of the three-point line in the NBA in 1979. His point guard needed driving lanes, and his center needed room to operate, making shooters increasingly important. And while guys just kept getting better at it, the three-point shooter went from being a role player to all-stars, and I think that the NBA took notice. The NBA experimented with the three-point line from the 94-95 through the 96-97 season. During this time, the three-point line moved closer from 23 feet 9 inches to a uniform 22 feet around the perimeter, which is what the corner three has always been. The reason for this was the league saw all-time low-scoring games in the seasons prior to 1994 and hoped that the change would increase scoring. Although the amount of threes went up in those years, the three-point line went back to 23 feet 9 inches because the league's scoring average actually went down. But I don't think that the experiment was a complete failure.
I have failed you.
Although points per game went down for the league, individually, the elite three-point shooters were having some of their best seasons. In 1995, John Starks was the first player ever with over 200 threes made with 217. And other shooters were starting to shoot at the same rate. So, the experiment did work. If a three-point shooter gets more opportunities from 3, then their points should go up. However, the rest of the league suffered. And I think that's as simple as players playing to their strengths. Shooters shooting more plays into their favor. And if you aren't a good three-point shooter and you keep shooting threes, well, you might look like you don't know what you're doing out there. More importantly though, the visuals of seeing your favorite three-point shooter jack up shots and increase their scoring had a positive effect on up-and-coming players. Similar to players looking at Jordan and copying his game, the same could be said for shooters, especially from 94 to 97. Going into Jordan's second retirement in 1998, we already had an idea as to what the NBA was about to look like, and it came in the form of a skinny 17-year-old from Philly by the name of Kobe Bean Bryant. Like I said before, the NBA is a copycat league, and who better to copy than the best player ever? He took Jordan's game and moves and added even more to it, and became just as good of a mid-range scorer as Jordan. Others followed suit. What came in the 2000s were one-on-one monsters, and often they were dominant mid-range scorers. Aside from players copying players, teams copy other teams that are successful, sometimes blindly, regardless of their personnel. This is an example of that. The rest of the league adopted this one-on-one style of play, but failed to take into account all the other players that made the Bulls team so great. The next step in this evolution of the game is a star player's ability to shoot the three. What was dominated by role players and specialists now had more and more star players taking part. Clearly, there was a shift in the game. Like I said earlier, through the 2000s, we saw less mid-range shot opportunities for role players, but an increase in three-point shot attempts from the stars of the team. Kobe Bryant held the record of 12 made threes in a single game in 2003, which stood for 13 years until Steph Curry broke it. The three-point shooter evolved again, and the stretch four was born. Having a three-point shooting forward proved to be extremely effective for great pick-and-roll players because of the option for the big man to roll or pop out for a jumper. Fast forward to 2013, and the NBA effectively eliminated the center from basketball via the All-Star game. And now, 7-footers, centers, and basically all 5 players on the court have the green light to shoot as many threes as possible. The NBA followed this with drop coverage. Drop coverage is just that. The big man drops to the paint to prevent alley-oops and layups. Aside from protecting the paint, the defense is supposed to urge the ball handler to take mid-range shots, which analytics says is a bad shot. According to JJ Redick and Chris Paul, their team started running the drop coverage around 2013. Chris Paul has a slightly different view on what analytics says about the drop coverage.
The drop coverage was to give up like twos, right? Totally different if you're giving up threes.
And we see the best shooters taking advantage of this all the time, having the ability to step into shots. How does the NBA follow this up? You were thinking the Warriors, right?
The Golden State Warriors are the 2015 NBA champions.
Before they even proved how potent the three-point shooting is, the Spurs did it first in 2014. This is probably a great example of the change that's taken place in the NBA. The Spurs in '99 won a championship with the twin towers of David Robinson and Tim Duncan. Fast forward to 2014 and they won emphatically against the Miami Heat trio, and a lot of it had to do with the incredible 46.6% they shot from three for the entire series, effectively starting this three-point shooting era. To an extent, I agree with the NBA. Watching games at 84-82 could be an extremely boring game, especially for more casual viewers. The NBA over the last 20 years has made a conscious effort to put an emphasis on scoring.
And that was just about as poor a defensive play as I've seen.
And why wouldn't they? Most of our favorite players are scorers, but at what cost? What kind of game are they creating with this analytics-driven game? To answer that, we should take a closer look at the most successful team of this era. The three-point shooting, fast-paced, 4-time world champions Golden State Warriors. Of course, this team is led by the greatest shooter we've ever seen and one of the greatest players ever in Steph Curry. Although everyone highlights their three-point shooting, I've always seen them as a more complete team than people give them credit for. Their offense has always been able to find success at all 3 levels of the floor. Steph and Klay get most of the shine for the threes, but add Kevin Durant to that mix along with other really good shooters, and the Warriors at any time can have up to 4 shooters on the floor. Their ability to get easy baskets is one of the main reasons why they've been so consistent. They've been able to develop a strong paint game with their dribble drives and their constant off-ball movement. They probably utilize backdoor cuts more than any other team. But one thing that I've never seen discussed about this team is that middle area. As we look at their head coach, Steve Kerr, who is part of 5 NBA championships with the Bulls and the Spurs. Kerr shot a blistering 45.4% from 3 for his career, which is still the record. Yet his most iconic shot ever was a mid-range shot that he hit to beat the Utah Jazz in the NBA Finals.
Michael in traffic to Kerr, 15-footer.
When he was asked about his training in an old interview, he spoke about practicing mostly from 18 feet.
Like I said, I generally practice from about right here. To be a good three-point shooter, first of all, you have to be a really good shooter, period. And I practice from 15 to 17 feet.
It's no surprise that he was one of the players who could fill in and hit shots from the mid-range for the Bulls. Clearly, the mid-range was always in Kerr's DNA. In practice, in games, all while playing with guys who were so effective from it. It shows with all the different variations of this Warriors team over the years. Their first championship team had Harrison Barnes as the starting three, who was a slashing finisher with athleticism, who also developed a mid-range game that the Warriors featured. Sean Livingston off the bench was known for his mid-range mastery, towering over other point guards at 6'7". In 2017 though, Harrison Barnes was basically swapped for Kevin Durant, who was already great from the mid-range, but during his time with the Warriors, he mastered it.
I just really started thinking like a big. Like, can I get some lays? Can I get a mid-range? Like, let me see if I can get some couple bunnies first and see how my J working tonight. Because if it's not working, then I can't be forcing all night from the three. If I get a little bit of space and I'm inside of the three, I feel like I'm making 100% of them.
So in this three-point era, even the best version of a three-point shooting team features mid-range shots. So why does analytics disagree? Do numbers, in fact, lie? Now, as much as I'd love to keep talking your ears off about statistics and the NBA with corny visuals to go with it, I decided to split this video up into 2 parts. Thanks for watching.